Welcome back to another episode of the Partly Cloudy Podcast. I'm Avery Gray, and we have a special guest with us today.
Hey everyone, I'm Chief Meteorologist Jenna Petracci, finally back on the pod for the first time in 2026, I believe.
Yes.
It's been a while.
Woohoo! You were on the New Year's Eve episode and got to ring in the new year.
This isn't like our typical fun holiday episodes.
Yeah.
And that's because we discovered something that we think is really important to talk about. And I think it's something a lot of you went through back 6 years ago now. It's crazy that was 6 years ago.
I know.
It was right before my time here. I started working here around Easter the following year in 2021. So I just missed this event. But this is the Easter 2020 CSRA tornado outbreak. And boy, this is intense.
Yeah.
There's a lot we have to talk about here. There's a lot with this. So not only was it during a holiday, it was technically Easter night going into the following Monday, but it was also during COVID.
Yeah.
And COVID was on the forefront of everyone's minds. You kind of forget about everything else going on in the world. It's like you're not even concerned about the weather.
Yeah.
Everything in the news was COVID.
Right.
And the way I discovered this event was because I knew I was going to be on this Easter-themed episode with Avery, and, I'm looking up, okay, has there ever been an Easter severe weather outbreak in the CSRA?
Yeah.
And I was stunned to find this one because I personally hadn't heard of it before, even though it wasn't too long ago. I've never really heard anyone talk about this event, and I think that is because COVID was the main thing on everyone's minds. And I also am just super fascinated with this event being April 12th into the early morning hours of April 13th because that is my wedding anniversary. So it's just kind of an eerie feeling I have. Of course, when I was picking my wedding date, I'm hoping and praying that the weather is just quiet, not only for my wedding, which was held in Alabama, but I just didn't want there to be any active weather back home in the CSRA while I was gone on my wedding and honeymoon. And just the fact that this happened back on the night I got married, going into the next day, of course, 5 years prior, it just kind of like puts a pit in my stomach. Like, I just don't like that. I could not imagine, y'all, if this happened just 5 years later and I was gone. I would have hated missing covering an event like this. So, I'm just super interested about this and excited to talk about it. This is the time. April is actually the most active month for South Carolina tornadoes.
Yep.
So that's when we have the highest chance of seeing them.
Yeah, and just severe weather outbreaks across the entire Southeast, really.
Yep. So.
Well, let's take a look, just diving right into this. This is the surface analysis on the morning of April 13th.
Yep. So this was very early in the morning. So Easter was on Sunday. Picture everyone is wrapping up their Easter plans, maybe getting ready to go back to work on Monday, or maybe traveling home after spending the holiday with their family. And this happened. And this is just so rare. Usually when we are expecting active weather, it happens during what we call the heating of the day, the afternoon hours, where you even have like some sunshine out. It's usually like a partly cloudy day. That sunshine helps to fuel the storms, and then that's when those storms could develop. But this happened overnight between the hours of around 4 a.m. to 7 a.m.
Yeah, that's right. And so talking about the setup of this specific event, it was during those early morning hours, and we didn't have sunshine. We didn't have heating to provide instability, but what we did have was something called a low-level jet. This low-level jet allowed for warm air and moist air to be filtered into the southeast, and most specifically over South Carolina and Georgia, where the severe weather outbreak happened. And that was at 850 millibars. So that is 5,000 feet in the atmosphere. And I've mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. Each layer of the atmosphere, so whether you're talking about 35,000 feet, 18,000 feet, right here at the surface, it all determines the weather that you get at the surface because of something that we call forcing or confluence, diffluence, divergence, all of those things. It allows for rising motion. And so we had a shortwave trough at the 500 millibar level, or 18,000 feet up in the atmosphere, so where planes are flying and jets are flying. And that allowed for us to have that forcing over South Carolina and Georgia. And then we also had an upper level jet, so not a low level jet, but an upper level jet at 35,000 feet in the atmosphere. And that allowed for convergence at the surface, allowed for that lifting mechanism. And then the most important thing is that low level jet, or just 5,000 feet up at the surface, is we saw that low level jet bringing us warm and moist air, giving us that instability that we could see during the daytime at nighttime. And that allowed for this severe weather outbreak to occur. And then that low level jet also helped change the wind speeds with directions, or something that we call shear. And it allowed for shear right there at the surface. And shear is the number one, ingredient that you need, along with instability for those tornadoes.
Yeah. That's an amazing explanation, Avery. You nailed it. You need everything to come together, both those upper levels and the lower levels. And of course, as meteorologists on this day, we had an enhanced risk, which is significant, but we weren't thinking that it would have happened in those overnight hours when we're lacking what's called CAPE. We're lacking that instability from the heating of the day. But like Avery mentioned, we had that low level jet. We also had really high precipitable water values at around 2 inches, which is really rare, and all of that moisture in the atmosphere, that helps to fuel not only heavy rain, but those thunderstorms as well. And right now you're looking at that Storm Prediction Center outlook from the late night hours of April 12th into the morning hours of April 13th. And you can see the CSRA is under an enhanced risk, which is level 3 out of 5. And when you're looking at this, you may think, okay, so it looks like maybe even Bamberg and Barnwell are not included under that enhanced risk, but that's because our SPC outlooks end at 8 a.m. and then it picks up with a new one. So I looked back at those outlooks as well, from 8 a.m. Monday to 8 a.m. Tuesday. And of course, the whole coastline was under the enhanced risk as well. So just wanted to clear up some confusion there, because I know sometimes people are looking at these and think, oh, I'm just in a marginal,
right? But
then don't realize it will turn into an enhanced risk once you get to that certain time frame.
Yeah, and I even think, looking back on this, and I'm sure those with the Storm Prediction Center as well, the forecasters there looking back at this, could have definitely really elongated this moderate risk to include our counties in the CSRA, because the tornadoes that we had were impressive. To say, and I think would be on the scale to warrant a moderate risk, and not just an enhanced risk for our area. So whenever we're thinking of future, whenever you're listening to this and you're thinking about things in the future, these tornadoes and this type of outbreak would be adjacent to a moderate risk in our area. So just as we're going throughout the rest of this severe weather season, if you ever hear about a moderate risk in our area and tornadoes and not wind, if it's a tornadic fueled, like a tornadic driven moderate risk outlook, this is what you can kind of have in your mind.
Exactly. Very rare that it would happen overnight again like this, but if you're in a moderate or even an enhanced and that line of storms is coming in during the daytime, that's when you really need to prepare for the possibility of EF2 or EF3 tornadoes. That is usually the highest we see here.
Right.
South Carolina and Georgia have never had an EF5, at least on record. There's been a couple instances of EF4s, and that has even happened with that event. So we're going to talk about that now.
Yeah, and this is a look at the storm reports. And so the blue dots are wind reports. So of course this had damaging winds as well along with it. But all of the red on your screen is tornado triangles. That's confirmed tornadoes that were on the ground at one point during this entire severe weather outbreak. So this was definitely a very tornadic system. And so speaking of the tornadoes that we saw in our area, let's take a look at those here. But we had, I think, 6 confirmed tornadoes in the CSRA.
Yeah, so it started with one in Burt County. And I will preface that this is from the National Weather Service out of Columbia, South Carolina. We use multiple different National Weather Service offices. So this graphic is focusing on the ones they covered for their counties. There were a few more tornadoes, which we'll also dive into, that were covered by the Peachtree City Atlanta National Weather Service office, and all of that started out towards the west, Washington, Jefferson County. That's where this outbreak technically began, but the tornadoes did get much stronger starting in Burke County, and that's number one that you're seeing on the map. That was in EF2. It was in northwestern Burke County. Then we had our second tornado for our Columbia, South Carolina National Weather Service office. The one they covered was the SRS tornado. Started at Savannah River site, went into Williston, Springfield. That was an EF3. And this was the beginning of several EF3 tornadoes that formed. We had another one at Savannah River site, EF3 there. Then another EF3 in Elko, Livingston, St. Matthews. That was a very long track for that one. We had tornado number 5 in Blackville, South Carolina, another EF3, and then tornado number 6 in Hilda, South Carolina. And you guessed it, another EF3 there as well. And then there's 2 more listed on this map, but we're not going to talk about those just because they were outside of our viewing area. I mean, these were long track tornadoes. So tornado number 2 went on for 38 miles, and then tornado number 4 went on for 37 miles. All of these tornadoes were between 125 to 145 mile per hour wind speeds. The weakest one out of that list was the one that started in Burke County. It was a higher end EF2, and there's the breakdown of those wind speeds. So luckily the ones we had here in the CSRA did not even come close really to EF4 strength. They topped off at 145 mile per hour winds, but still, I mean, usually 9 times out of 10, the strongest tornado we typically see here in the CSRA would be an EF2, a weak EF2 at that. So
Right.
This is significant, and really crazy fact here. From 1950 to 2019, during the hours of 3 a.m. to 9 a.m., only 8 significant F2, because that's what the scale was at the time, F2 instead of EF2, F2 plus tornadoes have been recorded in South Carolina. And then during this event, on the early morning of April 13th, 2020, we had 12 significant EF2 plus tornadoes in South Carolina, including that one EF4.
Yeah.
So during a 60, almost 70-year period, only 8 happened.
And then 12 during one night.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
goes to show how rare this event was, and should give you a little bit of peace of mind, too, to know that this is not something that will
common.
happen very often. I don't want to say it's never going to happen
Yeah.
again, because it definitely could, but you don't need to think this is a normal thing every spring.
Yeah, that's right. Very, very rare. Not common at all. And that fact just proved that it wasn't common. So this is the timeline of this event, all during those early morning hours for us here in the CSRA. Other people across the Southeast saw this later in the evening into the overnight hours. This was early morning, and you can see here that we had, at one point, 4 tornadoes on the ground at the same time.
Yeah, it was 1 minute, and you'll see that on the next graphic as well. It was, I believe, from 5:50 to 5:51 a.m., 4, which were EF3 tornadoes.
Yeah.
Going on at the same time.
And so here's a look at that, of the 4
Yeah.
tornadoes at the same time. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm speechless over this
Yes.
graphic. I mean, I'm just picturing, poor John Lynn at the time, just coming in for his morning shift thinking, there's going to be a couple strong storms.
Yeah.
There's probably going to be a couple tornadoes. Never. This is this is the equivalent of like a Hurricane Helene.
Right.
You can prepare your viewers. You can say, this is going to be a severe weather outbreak. We're going to have power outages. We're going to have a couple tornadoes. We're incapable of preparing you for something this
Strong.
and just extraordinary. We would have never been able to imagine that 4 of these would be going on at the same time.
Yeah, and all of it very similar strengths. Not at the same time they were going on.
Right.
But once they got, because there are different timelines with the tornadoes. So tornado 4 here is actually, very strong, and it's going to be dying out pretty soon. But the strongest tornado was tornado 6, and it was just getting started at this point.
Yep.
And me and Jenna were talking about it, and it's like, when you have 4 tornadoes on the ground at the same time, how do you cover that?
Yeah, it's very difficult, even with EF0, EF1 tornadoes, because we have a couple of those mornings go on at the same time, and that's a challenge. But with this, I mean, Avery was telling me earlier, it's almost like you might as well put the entire counties impacted under a giant warning.
Yeah.
And, I was talking to viewers in the CSRA who lived through this event, and they sent me screenshots on their phone of just warning after warning coming in. And I just can't imagine how scary that is to feel like, okay, we got through it, and then bam, another one, because they kept happening in the same area right around Savannah River site, which is very interesting.
Just how crazy this is and just how important it is to have a way to get alerted of severe weather systems. One, because they're going on at early morning hours of the day, and then two, especially if you don't watch the news every day.
You can see it here. I mean, you can tell just by looking at this. It was what we call a QLCS, quasi-linear convective system, and you could see what we call a comma head in there, which is indication of that rotation and those tornadoes forming. And these radar shots were taken an hour apart, 4:50 a.m. and 5:50 a.m.
And still incredible strength between within the hour.
Yep, exactly.
It didn't die down.
Nope, only got stronger. So like I mentioned, we had that EF2 in Burke County, and then as it continued to move eastward, it strengthened, which a lot of times it's the opposite.
Yeah.
So interesting to point that out as well.
That's right. And so this is tornado damage from, or just pictures of damage from that first tornado number 1. This was in Burke County, near Highway 25. You're looking at Milky Way Dairy Farm, and they lost their barns, equipments, and cattle. Extremely devastating for farmers, because that is their source of income. Not only is that their source of income, but that's the way that we have food on the table. So it always is awful hearing about tornadoes in any capacity, but I know it especially devastating for local farmers.
Yeah, this photo was sent in by Andrea Garvin Brown. It was her neighbor's dairy farm hit very hard by the tornado, as you can see. She wrote the destruction was devastating to see, but to witness the community come together to help with the aftermath was heartwarming.
Yeah.
Which we do have an incredible community here. We've seen that time and time again, from hurricanes to tornadoes. Everyone really helps each other out. So I do love that she at least put that positive note in the message.
Yeah. So now we're looking at tornado number 2, a very, very impressive storm. This is something that I would see, tracking storms whenever I was in college in Mississippi. It's something I wouldn't expect to see here. Very impressive. It has radar signatures, and so I'll kind of walk you through that here. It has a hook echo, pronounced hook echo within the storm system itself right there. Whenever we're talking about a QLCS or a cold front, this is something called a quasi-linear convective system. We typically see inflow notches, and they're just little spin-up tornadoes, but this was an embedded tornado that had very strong rotation couplet, very strong normalized rotation. Then it also had this extremely heartbreaking to see debris ball with that correlation coefficient there. And I just want to talk about the numbers. So with velocity and storm relative velocity, the number we're looking for is 25 knots to be concerned over a tornado. So this is double that parameter. For NROT, you're looking for a value of around 1.0. This is also more than double that parameter. Extremely strong storm.
Yeah, this is what we call a textbook example of a devastating confirmed tornado.
And this was the pictures of the damage from this storm.
Yeah, thank you to Amanda Graham for sharing these photos. She shared a ton of photos, and she was impacted by the EF3 tornado number 2, the one that started at SRS. She said, we weren't directly impacted, but they definitely had a lot of trees down. And she wrote that it was the scariest night of her life. Totally understand why.
Yeah. And then I'm pretty sure that these photos as well is also from the same storm.
Yep. Same storm, different person. This is Debbie Sneed. So thank you to Debbie for sharing these photos. The one she put in there of the comparison, that is so interesting to point out. And it gives me chills even looking at it. That was her granddaughter's house. It was a mobile home, and thank God her granddaughter was not home that day because her house was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
And that is why we always emphasize a mobile home is just not a sturdy shelter to be in, even during an EF1 tornado. You never know what could happen. But
Thank you, Debbie Sneed, for sending in those photos, and then just the comparison between the damage of the mobile home and then those structured, manufactured homes as well. Just always important to know where your safe space is.
Yep. All right, so now we're on to tornado number 2 again, and tornado number 4. This was at 5:52 a.m., so right around that time where the tornadoes were all happening at the same time.
From a scientific textbook standpoint, very sharp hook echo right there, very good tornado signature. Again, those NROT values, so tornado 2 was weaker at this time. Tornado 4, of course, much stronger, as it's almost or more than double the storm relative velocity value that we like to see. Same thing with tornado 4 with NROT values, or normalized rotation. And then the debris balls from both storms is just chilling to see. I never like to see a debris signature that looks like that, and I definitely don't like seeing 2 of them in the same spot, you know?
Yeah.
And so when we're talking about debris, debris can get lofted in the atmosphere, and that means that the storm is so strong that it's taking the debris, it's taking the trees, the parts of houses and everything, and it's throwing it up inside of the storm. That is 15,000 feet in the atmosphere. They took a cross-section of this analysis, and they could see that the debris was lofted 10 to 15,000 feet in the atmosphere. Just incredible strength of a storm to pull heavy objects that far up into the sky.
Now we are looking at an image of the damage path that was actually picked up on Google Maps. This was shared to me by Rex Bartles, so thank you so much, Rex. This is so interesting. Within that red circled line, you have to look really closely. You can actually see the damage of the path of tornado number 6, which was also an EF3. This is between Olar and Earhart and across over Highway 64. Rex said that we drive through there a lot on the way to the beach, and you can always see the damage. And once again, that's from Google Maps. You can tell exactly where it was. And yeah, both Rex and I determined that this was from tornado number 6.
And this is something that we call a tornado scar.
Yeah.
It left a scar in the earth that is being able to be picked up on satellite. And again, always a devastating sight. Some of the most damaging tornadoes produce scars, and those scars last a really, really long time.
Yeah, it's just insane to actually see that. Well, now we are on to tornado number 4. This was the Elko, Livingston, and all the way up to St. Matthews tornado that went on for around 36 miles, and this is the one that took the 2 lives of some folks in Orangeburg County and 7 injuries as well. This is just an absolutely heartbreaking one. I mean, they all are, but to know that this one actually took the lives of a couple people is just awful. And this happened at 6:02 a.m., at least the timing of this radar image was.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see, to learn about, to hear about, and
A loss of words on this one.
yeah.
But when we're going to toss it to break, and then when we return, we're going to talk about those other tornadoes we had in the CSRA that weren't quite as strong, but also impacted a couple more of our counties. So stay with us.
Welcome back, and we're going to jump right back into things, and we're talking about the Washington County tornadoes. Again, all of this within that same early morning of April 13th of 2020.
Exactly. So this is where it started. It impacted Washington County first, not to get confused with Wilkes County, where Washington, Georgia is, but this is Washington County, where we have the town of Sandersville. So this was on the southern side of Washington County. A brief EF0 tornado began just at the county border, And the tornado quickly moved northeast, mainly producing tree damage before quickly lifting around Highway 272 south of the city of Oconee. So once again, EF0, 75-mile-per-hour winds. This one was only 1.7 miles.
Yeah.
That was the track of this. So this really puts it into perspective of this is what we typically see. You know,
and what you want to see.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this is best case scenario. Like, I'm picturing John Lynn in the morning covering this event, and he's probably not at all surprised by these tornadoes that formed in Washington County. We're expecting that. Quick little spin-up tornadoes. Warning lasts no more than 30 minutes. There's some trees down. Not saying it's not significant. Of course, those trees that go down could fall on a home or a barn or any sort of structure. But in this case, you know, no lives were taken, no injuries occurred. And we had a couple more. We had a few tornadoes in Washington County. Some of them were longer tracks, 3 miles on this one. It was an EF1, 90-mile-per-hour wind speeds. We had trees down here as well. Numerous trees snapped near Hamburg State Park Road, Agricola Road. We have a EF1 with 100-mile-per-hour wind speeds here. 1.1 miles is the track. And then we also had one that was in Washington and Jefferson County, so where Louisville is located. And this was an EF1, 100-mile-per-hour wind speeds. This one went longer, 14 miles. It's that one on the right. So this one was significant, and you can just tell as soon as it started to progress further towards the east, entering Jefferson County, and then after Jefferson County comes Burke County. It just got stronger and stronger. So Washington County, you got spared.
Yeah.
All things considered. So as we wrap things up, I also want to just give a special shout out to the National Weather Service offices, once again, Columbia, South Carolina, Peachtree City, Georgia, for all of these great graphics and the overview of this event, which allowed us to be able to talk about it with y'all today because, once again, we weren't here during it.
Right.
So, you know, we really rely on our National Weather Service partners for giving us that information and this great review of this event.
That's right. And, you know, just to, you know, kind of piggyback off of that, this is something that we're always going to learn from. A very, very odd event for this to be an overnight and how strong it was. And hindsight's 2020. Looking back at it in retrospect, we can see and identify those meteorological, you know, forcing mechanisms and patterns and learning, studying these past events.
Yeah, it's a great learning experience and hopefully something that we will never have to experience again. But, you know, same as with Hurricane Helene. We learned a lot from it. We hope it never happens again, but we are definitely much more prepared, not only as meteorologists, but as a community to be able to get through events like this. Just to recap again, Easter Sunday, COVID-19.
Jinx.
Yeah, in a tornado outbreak. I mean, whoa.
And this would have been during Masters Week.
Yes.
So if it originally were planned in 2020. If it would have gone through, Masters Week would have been the 9th through the 12th. Thank you so much, Jenna, for being on this week's episode of the Partly Cloudy Podcast. I hope you all enjoyed it. I know I definitely did. And next week, we have Miller back. Right now, he's on vacation. He'll be back. And we will be talking all about the Masters. So talking about the Masters right there at the end was for this little segue to tell you that Masters climate and everything like that is coming in next week's episode.
All right.
See you around.
Bye, everyone.